who loves transgression loves strife, and he who hates seeks destruction. He who has a deceitful heart finds no good, and he who has a falls into evil. He who begets a scoffer does so to his sorrow, and the father of a fool has no joy. Verse 22 is what I want to emphasize. A merry heart does good like a medicine, but a broken spirit dries up the bones. I know this place is by nature somewhat adversarial, but I was just reminded a couple of days ago the importance of a merry heart. And so in that light, I want to share a story that will hopefully amuse you and give you a merry heart today. There were these two young boys who were stealing mangoes, and they had a croaker sack, and then the owner came and they ran the mangoes in his croaker sack. And they tried to hide, so they found a graveyard nearby, and they ran into the graveyard. As they were in the graveyard, they started exchanging some words, and then a drunken man was passing by, and he heard the exchange in the graveyard. He stepped up to the gate, and he heard, one for you, one for me, one for you, one for me. So he ran immediately down to the church and told the Rev, say, you know, something funny is going on in the graveyard. I think God and the devil are sharing up souls in the graveyard. So the Rev said to him, say, man, you know, you drink too much liquor, man. Say, you know, ain't nothing going wrong. So the drunken man insisted, and he said, please go with me to the graveyard. So the Rev and the drunken man went to the graveyard, and they came up to the gate, and sure enough, they heard, one for you, one for me. So the Rev was planning to walk away and dismiss it until something happened. There was a pause, and then the two men said to each other, said, what about the two at the gate? So the drunken man and the Rev ran down the road saying, we are not dead yet. I just thought I'd do something to give you a merry heart today and take your medicine. Amen? Amen. Let's bow our head. Father God, we just thank you for another day that we are alive, that we are well. We thank you for our country being blessed with a low rate of the COVID-19. And God, we just thank you for the progress that we will make together as Bahamians to return to what was before. And Lord, we just ask that you would bless the deliberations today. May we, as always, deliberate with civility and the spirit of fairness. We thank you for these things today. In Jesus' name, amen. Our Father, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. Forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.
Dr. Hubert Minute, Peter Turnquist, Ren Simonet, Desmond Bannister, Renwood Wells, Jeffrey Lloyd, Dr. Dwayne Sand, Marvin Dane, Frankie Campbell, Benicio de Aguilar, Michael Pintard, Darren Henfield, Ramal Ferreira, Benicia Rowe, Brenzel Rowe, Ellsworth Johnson, Philip Davis, Juan Miller, Lakeisha Parker Edson, Aram Lewis, Carlton Boleg, James Albrecht, Travis Robinson, Adrian Gibson, Donald Saunders, Frederick McAlpine, Hank Johnson, Mark Hume, Michael Folk, Miriam Repley Emmanuel, Reese Chipman, Ruben Ramming, Ricky Mackey, Shannon Dawn Cartwright, Chanel Ferguson, Leonard Hannah Martin, Spicewell Forbes, Chester Cooper.
Good morning, honorable members. Honorable members, I am in receipt of a communication from the leader of the opposition, the member for Cat Island, Rum Key in San Salvador. The letter is dated the 1st of February 2021, and that letter and its attachments were delivered to me this morning. I've had an opportunity to review the issue raised, and the issue being raised is the issue of privilege. I've also had the opportunity to meet with the member for Cat Island, Rum Key, San Salvador, the leader of the official opposition, and pursuant to the rules, section 4, which reads as follows: a member complaining of a matter arising before the commencement of a sitting as a breach of privilege or contempt shall produce to the speaker a copy of the publication containing the matter complained of and the name of the printer or publisher or written information of the claim, breach of privilege, if it is not in a publication, and shall seek leave of the speaker to raise the matter as a breach of privilege. Section 5 of Rule 37 says, if the speaker gives permission to raise the matter, the member may do so at the next sitting by a motion before orders of the day, that the matter be referred to the Committee of Privilege and Procedure. The member may speak for 15 minutes in proposing the reference. Having read the notice and the attachment, leave is hereby granted, and the member is permitted by motion to raise the matter to determine whether or not a prima facie case has been made out, to have this matter sent to the Committee of Privilege. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Cat Island, Rum Key, and San Salvador.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just propose to make the case for your reference. I do appreciate the conversation in respect to it. And I do also appreciate that as the Speaker, you have not made any determination at all. You just want to hear the case and you would determine the next step thereafter. So I thank you for allowing me to make this case. Speaker, let me begin by noting that in my travels throughout this country, since our last meeting here on Wednesday of last week, many Bahamians have said to me that they are distressed by the way my colleagues across the aisle are behaving in this House. They cannot understand how they carry on in such a juvenile way while the suffering of this
Honorable Member for Cat Island. Honorable Member, the chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Carmichael on a point of order.
I know that the member is raising a point of privilege, and I would not wish to interrupt him. But there's a point where one raises a point of privilege, where one does not keep the rules of the House by insulting members on the other side. And that's what he's just done. That is very disappointing. Yeah, there is a rule with respect to the manner in which we refer to each other in this place.
Thank you, Honorable Member for Cat Island from Kingston, Salvador. The word that you use in reference to
I
members opposite.
I think what is the offensive word? Juvenile? That is the word that I'm saying. What
Honorable Member.
I withdraw that word if that's the word he's talking about.
Honorable Member, I accept your withdrawal, but for the record, the word referenced by the Honorable Member for Cat Island from Kingston, Salvador is hereby expunged from the record. You may proceed, Honorable Member.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Speaker, people would like to see us as members of Parliament who are supposed to be working for them. You know, after all, these proceedings are supposed to be serious. Particularly, they believe that in this moment of economic crisis and the pandemic crisis, that we should be a bit more serious in our approach. Now, Speaker, from the 29th of September, 1729, when the first Speaker of this Parliament, John Colebrook, sat in that chair, representatives of the people have had the right to fully express themselves on issues impacting the people they serve without fear of persecution or prosecution. The importance of this aspect of parliamentary privilege, the protection of freedom of speech in Parliament, cannot be overstated. The functioning of our democracy depends on this fundamental liberty. This is how governments may be held accountable by the people and their representatives. The problem we have in the Bahamas in 2021 is that we have a government truly desperate to not be held accountable. How else to explain the statement of the Attorney General over the weekend, in which I was threatened with legal action for pointing out that the Prime Minister and Minister of Finance continues to hide hundreds of millions in pandemic spending in contravention of the letter and intent of the Emergency Powers Regulations. My statement...
Honorable Member for Cat Island. The chair recognizes Honorable Member for Carmichael on a point of order.
Speaker, the Honorable Member, Cat Island, knows better. He is making statements.
I'm making my case.
No. You are. He is making statements which are unsubstantiated and contain a conclusion that is unsubstantiated. And in the process, the Honorable Member is breaching the rules of this Honorable House with respect to the manner in which he speaks about members of opposition.
Honorable Member for Cat Island. Honorable Member for Cat Island. Let me just say that Rule 33 is clear with respect to imputations of improper motives and offensive and abusive languages and so on.
During my debate last Wednesday, I pointed out that the Prime Minister and the Minister of Finance failed to report in accordance with the law. Right? If he reported, then tell us where he did. He didn't. I am speaking on a set of circumstances and facts that is well known to all. Right now, I'm saying that the Attorney General, and I asked the question, what I say, and making my case, Mr. Speaker, I say that this government does not want to be held accountable. And I say that because
Honorable,
of what
honorable member.
I say that, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable member.
Thank you.
Sure. Honorable member for Carmichael, just a moment, please. Honorable member for Cat Island. The leave was granted for you to make your case of the breach of privilege. But in the process, honorable member, you are introducing matters and making allegations that breach the rule 33. Because what you are doing is you are suggesting that the side officer or members, the Minister of Finance and the Prime Minister, sheltering and hiding or not willing to be accountable. And so you're making unsubstantiated claims. Can you get to the matter? Lay out the breach.
As I'm getting to, Speaker, I'm doing that by setting the context in which it is laid. It is, Mr. Speaker, it's the backdrop of it, Mr. Speaker. This is the headlines in the papers, which I'm going to lay. Davis criticism of PM may have exposed him to prosecution. That is because of what I had to say at this report in this Tribune, which I lay again. PM in breach of rules. I've said that already in this House, right? And I'm saying, and I'm giving, and I'm interpreting a set of circumstances. Now, in the event that the Prime Minister, I will point out the rules, but once I get to it, and give a view and make my case. That's all I'm doing. Now, they will have an opportunity to respond to me. They will have to, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, let me say what I have to say if you would allow me. And if they would wish, they could answer me, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable member.
And I'm prepared, I understand rules. If they find that something is offensive or insulting, and I think so, as I did earlier, I will withdraw it. But let me make the case. And then Mr. Speaker, I'll invite you.
Honorable member for Cat Island, Rumpkin, you would also agree that I have a responsibility pursuant to the rules as well to make certain that if there is any breach of the rule, I have to intervene and to make sure. As a matter of fact, if you read Rule 3319, it says when the attention of the Speaker or Chairman is drawn to the words used, he shall rule whether or not they are objectionable.
Yes,
and so while I'm granting you the privilege, I'm not granting you the privilege to breach the rules. I'm granting you the privilege to make your case.
And I accept that, Mr. Speaker, and I'm making my case. And the Speaker, as I indicated, I am suggesting, right, I'm putting it in the context. I'm putting the process in context because my statements on Wednesday, right, and on Friday last week was made in two capacities. Firstly, and that is in relation to what I say has happened, that the Prime Minister has breached the rules. He has failed to report the millions of dollars of spending relating to the pandemic, as his own measures have required him to do. So I do so first as an attorney and member of the Bahamas Bar Association. In good standing, I may add, I stand on judicial precedent that a considered legal opinion in the course of interpreting the law and factors before that counsel by an officer of the court cannot be characterized as criminal liable as the Attorney General has. Secondly, I do so as a duly elected member of the House of Assembly.
The member for Cat Island, Honorable Member for Cat Island, the member for Carmichael is on a point of order. Chair recognizes the member from Carmichael.
If the honorable member is seeking to assert a privilege, we're happy to let him assert a privilege. First, he must state what is that privilege statement that he made that he's protecting. That's the first thing. Then the second, no, this is a parliament. You are not
Oh, oh.
you are not at large in this parliament. You are not at large in this parliament to insult members on the opposite side and to breach the rules. And you have not even asserted what the alleged privilege statement is. The first thing, Mr. Speaker, is that he must establish what is the privilege statement that he made. What is the alleged privilege statement that was made in the precincts of this House? And then he must establish how was that privilege statement attached. Those are the things that he must establish, Mr. Speaker. Buy one of these. Buy one of these. It tells you what to do.
The chair recognizes the honorable member for Cat Island, Rum Key, and San Salvador.
Never before I've ever heard counsel tell the counsel how to present his case. I presented the way I would wish. And I may, if I'm faulty about it, at the appropriate time, it will be ruled upon. But allow me to present the case the way I want presented. He wants me to present it the way he wants me to present it. Let me present it the way I want to present it, Mr. Speaker. And it's not a point of order for the member to get up to tell me how I should be doing what I should be doing. I should be doing what I want to do, how I want to do it, Mr. Speaker. And I thank you for granting me that privilege. And wherever, if I breach a particular rule, he said I'm insulting members. Tell me where. The privilege
Honorable member, that is the chair's domain to determine that area. So
thank you, Mr. Speaker.
you can proceed. My only concern is that if you're making your case,
Yes, sir.
and you make certain assertions or allegations, you must substantiate them. And you cannot breach the rule in terms of using objectionable words and insulting words or imputations. You cannot breach those rules in making your case. That's my only concern.
Speaker, as I said, I'm doing it first as a lawyer. The statement that I made is that the Prime Minister breached his own rules and measurements, and there are consequences. And the same rules and measures speaks to those consequences. The rules required him to make a report to this Parliament, right, of how he spent our monies during this pandemic. And we are aware from their own mouth of the hundreds of millions of dollars that have been spent. And what I'm saying, and that's not a close call. It ain't that. If they report, he would report it. It's either you report or he didn't. And if he didn't, then I say he breached the rules. Right? And then you have his Attorney General, and I don't know why the Attorney General appears to be willing to incinerate his reputation in service to the Prime Minister, who is acting unlawfully when he fails to report when details, as I said, of hundreds of millions have been spent during this terrible economic crisis. Right? And not to say, in the same economic crisis, that's the same Attorney General, who caused by mistake to let the emergency order lapse. Section 11.2. Yeah, negligence. Yeah. 11.2 of the emergency powers, COVID-19 pandemic regulation, mandate a reporting to Parliament about how the people's money has been spent. The reporting requirement is a crucial parliamentary check on executive power. Additionally, an audit of these public accounts under the Financial Administration Audit Act provides accountability. The findings of the audit must be and should be consistent with the government's report to Parliament. This is how the law works, Mr. Speaker. No man is above the law, even or especially when he finds it inconvenient or an obstacle. So, I mentioned a minute ago for my travels to the country. When members across the aisle throw out all the big numbers of what they're spending on this and the many millions spent on that, they should know that the main response of the people is disbelief. That's because they feel that so little of that money has reached them or their families. He's single mother sleeping in a car with her 3 children.
The chair recognizes Carmichael on a point of
That the
order.
member saying has anything to do with an allegation of a breach of privilege. Not anything that he's saying. He is abusing the opportunity that you have given for him to assert a privilege. The member has not even said yet what the alleged privilege statement is. He has not said what the alleged breach is. Mr. Speaker, he is abusing the opportunity you have given him.
Speaker,
Honorable member for Cal Island,
I'm tracking this to the lack of reporting.
can you get to the issue that was presented to the chair? The issues that were raised, I have it before me with respect to the issues that were raised in your communication to me.
Yeah.
I would like you to get to those. That I grantedly, based on what you have written to me, but you haven't gotten to that yet.
Speaker, but what I've gotten to, Mr. Speaker, is I said that is the notice. What I'm doing, Mr. Speaker, is now giving you the circumstance and context in which that notice is before you, and this is it, and this is the case I am in. And at the end of the day, as I said, Mr. Speaker, after I've made the case, however,
Honorable member, as an attorney as well, let me suggest this to you. You can, if you're making a claim, you have to state the claim. Otherwise, you have to, yes, I mean, you can, after you've stated the claim, you can go on and give the expressions that you may wish within your time limit. But for the benefit, particularly of those persons who might be viewing, who don't know exactly what your claim is, state the claim and the breach of privilege, and then proceed.
Speaker, I start first off by laying on the table just the headline of the Tribune of Thursday, 28th of January, 2021. It states, Davis PM in breach of rule. Therein, the Tribune has covered my comments made last Wednesday about the fact that the Prime Minister, contrary to the rules 11.2 of the COVID measures made by him as company authority, he did not report to Parliament. So I lay this first. What state is this? Yeah. What do they say again?
Honorable member, recommendation from the chair as we proceed.
Yeah.
The letter that you wrote to me, dated the 1st of February, read that into the record for me. That actually lays out your claim of breach of privilege. Read that into the record for me, and then you can proceed.
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, and I'll leave that as well.
Yes.
This is addressed to the Honorable Speaker, dated the 1st of February, 2021. Press statement issued by the Attorney General on the 30th of January 2021. I refer to the above reference as captioned, of which a copy is enclosed for your perusal, and in further response to the above, I wish formally to notify the Chair of my intent to refer this matter to the Committee of Privilege. I feel duty bound to refer this matter to the said committee because, as an attorney and a member of the Bahamas Bar Association, I stand on judicial precedent that a considered legal opinion in the course of interpreting the law by an officer of the court cannot be characterized as criminal libel. Further, as a duly elected member of the House of Assembly, the language, tone, and tenor of the statement referenced above and enclosed amount to a breach of my parliamentary privilege. For your ease of reference, please see below an excerpt from the statement, specifically the 3rd, 4th, and 5th paragraph of the press release that constitute, in my considered view, this threat of my parliamentary privilege. And I read that, Speaker, Unfortunately, the leader of the opposition, I'm quoting from the Attorney General's press release. Unfortunately, the leader of the opposition, the Honorable Philip Brave Davis, a very senior attorney and indeed a Queen's Counsel, decided to associate himself directly with the false allegation when he issued a public statement on the 29th of January 2021, which embraced the false allegations made by the said Dion Smith and expanded upon the same by abundantly stating that, quoting me, this breach, which is clear and unambiguous, exposed him, the Prime Minister and Company Authority, to liability, namely a fine of up to $10,000 and or a sentence of imprisonment of up to 18 months. The opinion,
Honorable member,
yeah.
that statement there is in bold print.
Pardon me?
Is the chair right in and taking it that this statement, which is in quotes and in bold print, this breach, which is clear and unambiguous, exposes him, the Prime Minister and Company Authority, to liabilities, namely
a fine of up to $10,000. Yeah.
Right.
What about that?
I'm asking you if that is.
That's what the law says, that anyone who breaches any of the measures, that is the likely outcome.
Okay, so that quote is actually taken from the law.
Well, this summarizes the law.
Okay, continue to the next paragraph.
The opinion and the conclusion drawn and serious allegations of criminality made by Mr. Smith and the leader of the opposition, Davis, and are based upon a false premise. They are wrong in law and on the facts, and those allegations expose both Mr. Dion Smith and Mr. Davis to possible liability in civil law for libel and possibly to criminal prosecution, where a complaint of criminal libel to be laid, or a complaint of criminal libel to be laid by the Prime Minister against the said person, and in the event of conviction, to the penalties set forth in the Penal Code for persons who commit criminal libel. As recited by Mr. Smith, in his opinion, the emergency powers regulations empower the Company Authority by order to waive procurement rules. If he does so, then the obligation of the Minister of Finance to report on all such procurement activities related to public health and safety follows. Within the 6 weeks after the expiration of any proclamation of emergency would arise. With your kind leave, I wish to bring this matter, and that's the basis of it. I'll lay the letter.
Order that the communication be brought up.
Mr. Speaker, I also lay.
Send that one up early so that I can have a copy.
Yes. I also
Order that the document do lie on the table. Can you?
I also laid a copy of what reported in the Tribune. That's the
order that the newspaper be brought up. This is a Tribune report dated Monday, the 1st of February, 2021. Order that the document do lie on the table.
I also lay the press release issued by the Attorney General.
Order that the document will lie on the table.
And for completeness, Speaker, I lay the report of my observations about and the fact that I said that the payment is in breach of the rule.
This is also a copy of the Tribune dated the 28th of January, 2021. Order that the document will lie on the table.
So, Mr. Speaker, that is the basis of it. Now, you see, my concern about the lack of reporting and the concern of Bahamian people are shared by the anti-corruption group called Transparency International and the IMF. In respect to the Transparency International, they have cautioned that OPEC procedures provide ample opportunity for corruption and diversion of public resources. I quote from Transparency International. They warn that the pandemic has brought about a corruption crisis as well as an economic and health crisis. That is what is being observed by international agencies. And yet here we have...
Honorable member, just a moment. Honorable member, that report that you're referring to, do you intend to table that? And are those specific observations for the Bahamas?
I could
Or are they general observations?
There are observations made, which I said, I said, Mr. Speaker, these are observations made about the distribution of funds in respect to pandemic. I don't have the report with me, but I undertake to provide it to you before the day is out. Before the day is out.
The chair recognizes honorable member for Yamakro on a point of order.
I commend Mr. Speaker for your precision and your observation.
Replying of the member that I whether or not those observations would be corruption. To clarify, they have nothing to do with the Bahamas.
And he doesn't even have the document to which he refers. I'm quite certain that if Mr. Speaker, I'm still on a point of order.
Honorable member for Cat Island.
If he could,
We have your clock stopped. Honorable member, let me hear the member for Yamakro.
you know they say about presumption and thought. You must be specific. They're the mother of all contortions. I can't use the other words. But Mr. Speaker, he's not, the member for Cat Island, Rumpkins, and Salvador doesn't even have the document to which he referred for us, but that's a very serious allegation. And he's imputing corruption to the Bahamas and/or to the Bahamas government. And this is the person, without, Mr. Speaker, months ago, without proper documentation, said that the Prime Minister was going around the world talking down the Bahamas. If ever there was an example of that, is now, because he's making these unfounded accusations without the
Thank you, honorable just a moment, honorable member. Mr. Clark, that clock is working.
Y'all keep interrupting. I keep interrupting. And they want to stop the clock.
Okay, honorable member for Cat Island.
Yes.
I'm being informed that we are beyond the 15 minutes allocated time, and that I'm going to extend you some time because of the interruptions. However, honorable member, with respect to that statement, I cannot accept that statement to remain on the record unless you have evidence at this time. You're making your case now.
Yeah, Mr. Speaker.
I cannot accept that you would provide the evidence after you've made your case.
No, it's not, Mr. Speaker. Might I just respond very briefly? I never said that the comments related to the Bahamas. I said the comments is relevant because when one fails to report, these are the issues that could arise. I'm saying that what they speak about best practices. Best practices require persons to report. They have failed to report. And I'm just drawing upon other best practices that's been generally accepted around the world. Transparency International speaks to what best practices would be. And as I said, I could produce the report. I will produce it later on.
Honorable member. Honorable member for Cat Island, Rumpkins, Salvador. the chair is of the view that out of an abundance of caution
Very well.
related to that statement, and the risk of it being misinterpreted and published in the newspaper, that statement is hereby expunged from the record.
No, Mr. Speaker, I could, like I said, I could say this outside too, and I will. But I mean, I hope that Joe at least have the decency to listen to me. Right? Have the decency, listen to
Honorable
me.
members,
Right? So,
honorable
Mr.
members.
Speaker, I accept what you have said. I don't have the report, but I will produce it if that is still required of me, and I'll have it to you by this afternoon. Right? But but the issue here is that the Attorney General offers this technical argument about no order being made in respect to the procurement exercise, either to depart from or to conform with existing procurement rules. But at the end of the day, Mr. Speaker, this is the very best argument that they could conjure up. This is after days of scrambling to respond. The fact that procurement rules remain in place because no order was made to displace it suggests that there should be no penalty for not following these same rules because they were not explicitly waived. In effect, the rules were not followed, but we didn't say in advance we weren't going to follow them. That's the argument. That's what it amounts to. You see, that's the kind of legal contortion that doesn't give the profession a good name. But Mr. Speaker, what they say now, Mr. Speaker, they say that a report is coming. That's what they're now saying. A report is coming. And the question is, who believes them now? See, the question is, they know what they spent. They know they know who benefited from the contract and the spending. And they could tell us that today if they wanted to. But they don't want to. It is for telling these simple truths, Mr. Speaker. It's for telling this simple truth that I was threatened by the Attorney General. I was threatened by him. I don't take threats lightly. So I will continue to ask this question. I continue to ask the question, Mr. Speaker. What is the government afraid of in respect to reporting? What do they have to hide? Let's talk, for example, about food assistance in this pandemic.
Honorable member, honorable member.
That's funny.
Yeah.
I want you to report on how you. I want you to report on how the
honorable member for Carmichael, your point of order is well taken. Honorable member for Cat Island.
That's what.
Honorable member for Cat Island. Let me just say, the chair is satisfied. The chair is satisfied that you've made your case. I'm not extending any further time at this point.
Very well.
The chair is satisfied. Honorable member for Yamakro. The chair. Honorable member for Cat Island, resume your seat. Honorable members, the chair is satisfied. I'm not finished yet. The chair is satisfied that the honorable member has made a case, and I am minded to send the case on to the committee of privilege. However, if the government side wishes to respond, if you respond, then the matter will be open for debate. and the chair will then be obliged to open the matter for debate. So the chair recognizes the honorable member for Carmichael.
Sir, I'm grateful to you. We have no difficulty with the matter and being open to debate. Unlike members opposite, Mr. Speaker. And they spent $500 million without tendering anything, that kind of thing. We will bring that to the House. $500 million by the same person who is now raising this. So we are not afraid of debating this issue, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker.
Honorable members.
Speaker, let me take you through. Speaker, I know you're aware of the law, but just for the sake of everybody who's listening, let me just take us briefly through the law and privilege, very quickly. The Constitution of the Bahamas, Article 53(1), provides that without prejudice to the generality of Article 52(1), this Constitution, and subject to the provisions of paragraph 2 of this article, Parliament may by law determine the privileges, immunities, and powers of the Senate and the House of Assembly. So Parliament has the power to determine what are privileges. Parliament did that, and that is set out in Chapter 8 of our laws, the powers and privileges and immunities, powers and privileges of Senate and the House of Assembly. And Mr. Speaker, there's a provision on freedom of speech. It says no civil or criminal proceedings may be instituted against a senator or member for words spoken before or written in a report to the Senate or the House, respectively, or committee, or by reason of any matter of thing so brought by him by petition, bill, motion, or otherwise. The key word is before. So if the member spoke in this House, before this House, as he alleged on the 27th, I wasn't here, but I think it was the 27th, then no proceedings could be brought against him. And had the Attorney General said anything in relation to that, I would have been with you. But let me go back to your document, Mr. Speaker. Let me go to your document. Mr. Speaker, this is a document that was tabled by the member opposite. I'm going to go to that. Paragraph 3. Now remember, Mr. Speaker, the member is supposed to be referring to matters that occurred on the 27th. This is the statement by the Honorable Attorney General. Unfortunately, the leader of the opposition, the Honorable Philip Brave Davis, I believe that's you, a very senior attorney. You're a very senior attorney. You're Queen's Counsel, and he said that. And indeed, a Queen's Counsel. I commend you. I've never been appointed Queen's Counsel. The Speaker, these are the key words. Decided to associate himself directly with the false allegations when he issued a public statement on the 29th of January 2021. That's not the 27th, Mr. Speaker. This refers to a public statement on the 29th of January 2021, which embraced the false allegations made by the said Dion Smith. Embraced it and expanded upon the same by affirmatively stating, and then a quote. Now, if he don't quote you right, Cat Island, if you don't quote you right, let me know, and I will apologize to the Attorney General. This is the quote. This breach was as clear and unambiguous, exposes him, the Prime Minister, and the competent authority, the liabilities, namely a fine of up to $10,000 and or a sentence of imprisonment of up to 18 months. Now, if you didn't say that on the 29th, Cat Island, I will sit. But that was published in relation to you on the 29th, not from the 27th. The Attorney General went on to say, the opinions and the conclusions drawn and serious allegations of criminality made by Mr. Smith and the leader of the opposition, Davis, are based on a false premise. They are wrong in law, and the Attorney General has that responsibility to the Bahamian people. He has to say if they're wrong in law. And he said it.
They are wrong in law and on the facts, and those false allegations, Speaker, whenever I interrupted Cat Island, I stood on the point of order. Speaker, how many Queen songs will beat me up?
Honorable member, the chair recognizes the honorable member for Cat Island, Rum Key, and on a point of order.
Mr. Speaker, unlike those opposite, I would like to hear what they say, and then I would respond it. But he has invited me to get up and ask what I asked when I'm sitting down. I just asked him, because I would have responded, but I think I have a right to respond since he's opened the debate. I asked him whether, in his considered view, whether that the Attorney General is correct to say that charges of criminal libel could emanate from an opinion. That's what he read, that he said, the Attorney General said that he was wrong in law. That's what he said, the Attorney General said in reading my missive. I asked him whether the Attorney General was right to say that. That's what I asked. But I asked him. He asked me to get up. No, Mrs. Speaker. I was sitting there quietly, though. I wanted to hear him. Unlike him, they didn't want to hear me. They yelped often when I spoke. What I am saying, what I asked him is he, in his considered view, he is also a senior lawyer. He should have been a QC too. Why he thinks that the Prime Minister is right. Not the Prime Minister, but
The chair recognizes the honorable member for Carmichael.
Now, I'm not going to disclose. See, now, I've had some conversations about this. I will not disclose it. No, man. No, see.
Honorable members.
He has.
Honorable member for Cat Island.
You know why?
Honorable member for Cat Island.
He has already given his opinion on the matter. And I was advised.
The chair recognizes the honorable member for Carmichael.
Speaker, my
Melanson, you were in the second paragraph.
Speaker, I get my feelings hurt when Lawrence Senior and Queen's Counsel stand to reprimand me. I'm really hurt. But
You in paragraph 4.
I will say Speaker, I will say to that member of whom I'm very fond, that any opinion I gave did not relate to him. Yeah. Speaker, if I can start that paragraph again, but being reprimanded by Queen's Counsel, Mr. Speaker, is a very serious thing in our profession, and
I'm sitting at the feet of the
May I continue, sir?
Yes.
The Honorable Attorney General went on to say, the opinion and the conclusions drawn and serious allegations of criminality made by Mr. Smith and Leader of Opposition Davis are based on upon a false premise. They are wrong in law and on the facts. And those allegations expose, he used the word expose, both Mr. Dion Smith and Mr. Davis to possible liability in civil law for libel and possibly to criminal prosecution. Now listen to this, Mr. Speaker. Were a complaint of criminal libel to be laid by the Prime Minister against the said persons, and in the event of convictions to the penalties set forth in the Penal Code for persons who commit criminal libel. As recited by Mr. Smith in his opinion, the Emergency Powers Regulations empower the competent authority by order to waive procurement rules. If he does so, then the obligation of the Minister of Finance to report on all such procurement activities related to public health and safety to Parliament within 6 weeks after the expiration of any proclamation of emergency would arise. Where, Mr. Speaker, what the Attorney General is saying is that if there had been an order, had there been an order in place under subsection 1, then there would have been an obligation under subsection 2. Mr. Speaker, just to reinforce what I said, I went to May's practice on parliamentary practice, Erskine May, which we all refer to from time to time in this place. And I just want to read what it says on freedom of speech. Chapter 6 on privilege of freedom of speech. And I'm in the 23rd edition. I don't know if you have a later edition than what I have.
I have an earlier edition.
I couldn't afford any later editions. But the 23rd edition on chapter 6 begins following the historical development outlined on page 79 to 82. Final legal recognition of the privilege of freedom of speech in both houses of parliament is to be found in Article 9 of the Bill of Rights 1689, which states that, and then there's a quote, the freedom of speech and debates or proceedings in parliament ought not to be impeached or questioned in any court or place out of parliament. It specifically refers to freedom of speech in parliament. Speaker, if I can go on to the following page, page 96, says freedom of speech and debate. Subject to the rules of order and debate, see chapter 18. A member may state whatever he thinks fit in debate, whatever he thinks fit. So if the member wants to say that I should be a Queen's Counsel, he could say that. I'll be happy. He could say that in debate. But I'd be happy if you said that. However offensive it may be to the feelings, or injurious to the character of individuals. And he's protected by his privilege from any action for libel in debate, as well as from any question or molestation. And Speaker, if I could go further on page 99, the second paragraph. If a member of either house publishes separately from the rest of the debate, a speech made by him in the course of proceedings in Parliament, his statement becomes a separate publication, unconnected with any proceedings in Parliament. And he is responsible under the common law for any libelous matter it may contain. So, Mr. Speaker, if I make a statement in this House, which may, except for the fact that we are in the House, be considered libelous, and I republish that statement outside the House, it does not attract privilege. So even if the member had republished the statement that he made in the House, which he didn't, he made another statement. Even if he had republished the statement, it would not attract privilege. Mr. Speaker, without maligning anybody, without calling anybody any names, without breaching the rules of the House, I have sought as best I could to encapsulate what the law of privilege says and to indicate why nothing said by the Honorable Attorney General, nothing breaches any privilege that the Honorable Member for Cat Island may claim. And if his privilege had been breached, had Cat Island's privilege been breached, I would have been the first one to defend his privilege, because I know how important it is for us to be free in this place to say whatever it is that our constituents may lay on our hearts, and we may feel is the right thing to say. So, Mr. Speaker, with those brief words, unless there's something further that you would wish for me to address, that's the position of this side. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Honorable Member. The Chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Cat Island, Rum Key, and San Salvador.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Let me just say that I'll be the first to say that the member for Carmichael, wherever he sees, wherever there's wrong, he will be quick to right that wrong, particularly as it relates to me. No. I accept you. I hear you. If you believe my privilege was breached, and so what the member is saying is that because of the words possible exposure, he said exposure. He said possible. He said possibility. Yeah, those are good. No. Let me just suggest that those words, it is said in the context that they were not definitive position. They were just perhaps observations by the Attorney General. But observations itself has to be founded on a set of circumstances and facts that that is clear. And it's clear. And I would have had some conversations about this, and I'm not going to divulge that because it was private. But suffice it to say, Mr. Speaker, I was speaking with, I think you might have been present when someone indicated to us that's about our pay grade. You were present, right? And there are some things that's about many in here pay grade. But suffice it to say that I understand those language. It's like sometimes when people say, with the greatest respect, there's a famous judge who very often says, "Don't say that to me. That's all you tell me. You don't respect me." Right? And so we understand the language. We understand what is called to give one wriggle room in case it reaches a point where at least I could have an alternative response to what I would have said. And so, yes, the member has yes. So this is the transparency report. If you all still want it made, I have it here. With all what it speaks to about what the pandemic exposes countries to. Right? The word countries. I didn't say I use the word countries. You say the word, the countries. So if we get back to this, Mr. Speaker, I said in Parliament, and I embrace that. The letter does not say I did not repeat what I said. I said what I had to say in Parliament, and I said it in public. And I will perhaps say it again in public, because I think the Bahamian people need to understand and know what's happening with their funds. And that's why I started to talk about food assistance, that program, and how that is being administered. We could talk about other expenditures that's being done. So, Mr. Speaker, and the member speaks about the fact that he's going to talk about $500 million that was issued in contracts. I'm speaking what he said.
Honorable member, the member for Cat Island, Rum Key, and San Salvador has the opportunity to wrap up.
Yeah, I'm wrapping. Thank you, Speaker. And he spoke about 50%. I'm prepared to debate that as well. I just hope they'll be prepared to debate all of the millions of dollars they gave as well, without bidding, because we know about those as well. And so, and there's reasons why contracts are awarded without bidding, and that doesn't speak to anything untoward, right? But since you raise it, we can speak to it. I'm prepared. I can debate that. Yeah.
The chair recognizes the honorable member for Carmichael.
Speaker, I want to make it abundantly clear that when I made that statement, I was not seeking to allege that the member has done anything untoward. I wouldn't make that statement in relation to him. I was making a statement along the same lines of what he was making, and that is that certain things were done without following certain established procedures. That's all I was saying. I make no allegation. I make no allegation of impropriety on behalf of the member for Cat Island. I would not do that.
Thank you. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Cat Island, Rum Key, and San Salvador.
Yeah, Mr. Speaker, I understood the member to speak to making it the subject of debate. That not that he was alleging anything untoward toward me, but that he may have made it a subject of debate that so many millions of dollars of contract was issued without bid. And I just wanted him to know. I want everyone to know. The public to know it. Hundreds of millions, yeah. Half a billion, you said. Sorry, he said half a billion. I said, I am prepared to debate that. And I would hope that they'll be prepared to debate their millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars that they would have given out without bidding as well. That's what we said. Yeah. And so, yeah, that's what. Yeah, team, man. Yeah. To make sure I get it right. And that's, yeah. And so, they always want to read something and so, yeah, and so, Mr. Speaker, I would,
Honorable members,
so, Mr. Speaker, the point here, Mr. Speaker, is that the emergency regulations, the emergency regulations that was laid in this House under 11.2 speaks to the Minister of Finance within 6 weeks reporting. Now, the Attorney General says that the opinion was based on a false premise. What is the false premise? Right. The question one asks him or herself is, did the minister report? If he did not report, then that would be that's a fact that an opinion could be given on and the consequences. Right, and that is what the opinion was given on. Now, insofar as the consequences, that's wrong. It's all in the. No, it's all in the emergency powers. So, Speaker,
Island.
I just suggest.
You have a minute to wrap up.
Okay, Speaker, what I say, Mr. Speaker, one, my privilege was in fact breached. I asked that it be that you said you were minded to send it to committee. I asked that you do send it to committee so that we can examine it as to whether or not the Attorney General can threaten me or possible probable prosecution. Yeah. That is, see, out the public domain, you know, people saying, boy, Brave, look like you might go to jail. Yeah, they say we're single. But see, but they're coming from the Attorney General, you see? And so, yeah, so Mr. Speaker, and in respect to the penalty, let me just read to the House. It is Rule 29 of the Emergency Powers Regulation that speaks to any person who contravenes the provisions of any of these regulations or any order made or notice given thereunder, or incites or attempts to incite any other person to contravene any of these regulations or any order made or notice given thereunder, commits an offense and is liable upon summary conviction to a fine not exceeding $10,000 or a term of imprisonment not exceeding 18 months or to both. Now, what was false about him saying that? He just recited what the law was. What was false about him stating that Rule 11.2, Regulation 11.2, requires the minister to report? Where is the report? And that's the question that's out there, Mr. Speaker. And I pray that you send the matter to committee. I also, pardon me? That's what they said. No, Mr. Speaker, Who speaker? Who speaker? Where you just come from?
Honorable member,
Oh, you was oh, I didn't say.
honorable member,
Who you say outside?
you intend to table the document?
The speaker,
I don't want to extend this matter any further so that we can move on.
I then lay the report. I'll just take out paragraph, that's the Transparency International report, so that all could read, that speaks for COVID-19 and corruption, which I quoted from. They said that they wanted, I didn't have it, I now have it, I now lay it, so that they can all read it. The reason why it is so necessary. So necessary, because this is what is important, why the reporting requires is necessary.
Order that the document be brought up.
Well, I don't think they want to go there, but I'll let them decide where they want to go.
So thank you very much, honorable member. Cat Island, Ramkey, San Salvador. Order that the document to lie on the table. Honorable members, having heard the complaint and the response, it is the order of the chair that this matter be sent to the committee on privilege. Introduction and swearing in of new members. The chair recognizes the honorable member for South Beach.
May I, sir, respectfully beg your indulgence, just to like to notify the House that the honorable member for Michael, was reliably informed, was in a car accident on Monday morning, suffering injury, taken to the hospital, then discharged, but still under doctor's care, just to notify the House and ask for her best regard to be extended by our honorable members, please. Honorable member for Michael.
Thank you, honorable member for South Beach. And we all wish that the honorable member for Michael have a speedy recovery from any injuries sustained in that motor vehicle accident. Introduction and swearing in of new members. Laying of documents by ministers. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Bamboo Town.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg leave to lay on the House a copy of the following. The Nurses Council, Commonwealth of the Bahamas financial statement, December 31st, 2019.
Order that the document be brought up. Order that the document will lie on the table. Further laying of documents by ministers. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Bamboo.
Mr. Speaker, there are no further laying of documents by ministers.
Statements and communications by ministers. Communications by the clerk. Messages from the Governor General. Messages from the Senate. Honorable members, we have a message number 67 from the Senate. Message to the Honorable Speaker and members of the Honorable House of Assembly from the Honorable President and Honorable members of the Senate. The Honorable Senate acquaints the Honorable House of Assembly that they have agreed to the following resolution accompanying message number 66, dated the 27th of January 2021 from the Honorable House of Assembly. And I won't read all of the details of it, but just the first and last paragraph. Whereas pursuant to Article 29, subsection 1 of the Constitution, the Governor General may make a proclamation of emergency declaring that the state of public emergency for the purposes of that article exists in the Bahamas. Now therefore, be it resolved that this House approves the continuance of the proclamation of emergency made on the 24th day of November 2020 until the 23rd day of May 2021. Order that the message do lie on the table. Honorable members, while we are at this point, I have also a communication from the Office of the Auditor General enclosing audit reports from the Auditor General for the year ended the 30th of June 2018. And that report is a report from the Auditor General for the year ended 30th of June 2018. Order that the report do lie on the table. And the second report is the performance audit of the Real Property Tax Department of Inland Revenue. And that is dated the 14th of December 2020. Order that the report do lie on the table. Motions for leave of absence, leave to resign, seat, and new writs. Presentation of petitions. Presentation of reports of committees. Adoption of reports of committees. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Tall Pines.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With respect to reports from committees, I rise, Mr. Speaker, as chairman of the Statutory Instrument Sessional Committee with regard to the common comment by the member for Centerville and requests thereafter by reporters, etc. But I just wish to report just a preliminary report or an interim report, Mr. Speaker. The report that the committee speaker has met. We met in May of 2020 to examine a petition as the committee is instructed to, pursuant to our rules, to examine the two petitions that the member for Centerville tabled in this House some time ago. Mr. Speaker, we did examine, we held that meeting, as I said, in May in 2020, and we did examine the two petitions, Mr. Speaker, the natural resources petition and that address also the enforcement of the sovereign fund. The second petition laid by the member for the review of the Quieting Title Act of 1959. Speaker, we did indicate to my learned friend, I did indicate to the member for Centerville that we did meet and we did intend to give at least an interim report to this House. As a result of COVID, obviously, we did not have an opportunity to meet again. But we just wish to report now, Mr. Speaker, that we intend to table a more formal report to this Honorable House, especially given the current developments with regards to natural resources and the select committee being established, led by the member for Golden Gates. And also, Mr. Speaker, I intend to further address the issue with regard to reviewing the Quieting Title Act. And so, Mr. Speaker, I find it necessary, Mr. Speaker, as Deputy Speaker and as a committee chairman, to at least give the House this interim report. And I hope, Mr. Speaker, in due course, within a week or two, to be able to table a more formal report to the Honorable House. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Adoption of reports of committees. First reading of bills. Second reading and committal of bills. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Freetown.
Good morning, Mr. Speaker. Good morning, fellow parliamentarians. It's almost good afternoon. Oh, no, it's good morning. Good morning, Bahamas. I never thought we'd get to this point this morning, but it was a very interesting dialogue for those of us that are not lawyers. And it was good to see the robust back and forth. Although I must say, when we go to battle, I think I can want Carmichael on my side. First and foremost, Mr. Speaker, I would like to wish the great constituents of Freetown a very happy new year. Hopefully, Mr. Speaker, 2021 is a better year than 2020 for the constituents of Freetown. But there is no doubt, Mr. Speaker, that the continuation of this coronavirus pandemic is significantly impactful on the economy of the Bahamas, especially the tourism sector, and is significantly impactful on the daily lives of the people of Freetown. Mr. Speaker, when you don't have a job, you get stressed. How you can pay your rent? How you can pay your light? How you can pay your water? How you can feed yourself and your family? Mr. Speaker, this coronavirus pandemic has shut down almost 50% of our economy. With absolutely no cruise ships coming to the Bahamas, for example, 5.4 million tourists who would spend cash money when they came have simply evaporated. There are none, Mr. Speaker, not one.
Honorable member, before you get on a roll, let me make certain. I have 3 bills in my possession. Which bill, first of all, is the lead bill, and are we debating them as a compendium, all
Yes, sir.
3?
Yes, sir.
Which bill will be the lead bill?
The Civil Aviation Authority bill, then the Bahamas Air Navigation Services bill, and then the Civil Aviation bill. I'll do them in that order. Oh, Civil Aviation Authority bill.
Thank
Be the
you.
lead bill. That would be the lead bill. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, honorable member. You may proceed.
The coronavirus pandemic has reduced world travel by an estimated 70%. People are being strongly encouraged to stay at home. Do not travel is all we hear from world leaders for fear of contracting and transporting the virus. Layer on top of that, pronouncements made by President Joe Biden that a week or so ago, he wanted to implement a federally mandated quarantine on all travelers returning to the U.S. from a trip abroad, which he has thankfully now been stood down, and an announcement by Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau Friday gone that all flights to the Caribbean from Canada have been banned until the 30th of April 2021, some 3 months from now. And you see why our number one industry, the generator of 2 out of every 3 Bahamian jobs, the source of income and dignity for many of my constituents in Freetown and the Bahamas at large, is in distress. Mr. Speaker, while this once-in-a-century coronavirus pandemic has been severely impacting tourism-dependent economies like ours, depriving thousands upon thousands of Bahamians of their livelihoods, I want the constituents of Freetown, the taxi drivers, the Cabbage Beach vendors, the jet ski operators, the hotel workers, the restaurant workers, the marina workers, the straw market vendors, to know that I, Dionisio James de Aguilar, their representative, and the current Minister of Tourism, and my entire team at the Ministry of Tourism are working as hard as we can to turn this situation around. It breaks my heart, Mr. Speaker, to see the effects of this coronavirus pandemic on my beloved Bahamas and on my beloved Freetown. Mr. Speaker, with the arrival of the vaccine, however, and with the increasing number of people getting the shot in their arms, I saw that on the TV last night that 1.5 million Americans are being vaccinated each and every day now. and that number is expected to exponentially increase, I strongly believe that there is a light at the end of this very dark tunnel. And Mr. Speaker, I was delighted to learn yesterday that vaccines for Bahamians will start to arrive in country starting this month. And it is my hope that after accommodating our frontline workers and our most vulnerable, hotel workers and other employees in our tourism sector can be prioritized. Don't get me wrong, Mr. Speaker. Things can be rough for the next couple of months as the countries from where most of our visitors come from deal with their far worse version of the coronavirus pandemic. But as the vaccine gets traction, things will improve. They have to improve. Constituents of Freetown, my parting words of advice to you before I debate these three bills before us today. Beware of the snake oil salesmen, the naysayers, who will come to you saying that they could have done a better job. Notwithstanding the worst hurricane, Dorian, to hit the Bahamas ever, followed very shortly thereafter by a never in our lifetime economic calamity known as the coronavirus pandemic, which blew a staggering $1 billion out of our annual budget. Yes, we've had some bumps in the road. So has the much touted Barbados. But we have stabilized the situation on the ground, arrested growth in community spread, significantly reduced the number of coronavirus infected persons in our hospitals, flattened the curve. So much so that tourists who are vacationing here continue to comment how safe they feel here. And especially in that high-end market, expressing a desire to extend their stay here away from their COVID-challenged, cold, dark, dreary, totally locked down countries, providing some employment opportunities for the constituents of Freetown in these challenging times. Freetown, stay strong. Things will get better, and I will continue to do my endeavor best to ease the pain, dampen the suffering, allowing you to prepare for a brighter future. Mr. Speaker, I now turn to the matter before us. Freetown moves and supports the compendium of bills, the Civil Aviation Authority Bahamas Bill 2021, the Civil Aviation Bill 2021, and the Bahamas Air Navigation Services Authority Bill 2021. Mr. Speaker, these three bills are not controversial in any way. They are boring bills, essentially taking care of some essential housekeeping necessary to ensure that the Bahamas remains relevant and up to date with the safety and oversight functions of our critically important aviation sector. Mr. Speaker, aviation is a critically important sector in our country. We are a country of many islands. And so the only way in many instances to get from one island to another is by air. Also, as mentioned, our country relies heavily on tourists vacationing here. And in 2019, 1.8 million such tourists, a record number, came here by air. Given, therefore, the importance that aviation means to our economy, given the importance aviation means for job creation in Freetown and the wider Bahamas, it is critically important that we operate the best and, most importantly, the safest aviation sector in the world. Sadly, Mr. Speaker, based on the last safety audit that was performed on our aviation sector, it was revealed that we are not operating near at the level we need to be considered one of the best run, safest aviation sectors in the world. In fact, Mr. Speaker, it was revealed in that audit that we were getting worse and not better. The last audit that I'm referring to was performed in late October 2017. The entity performing the audit was the International Civil Aviation Organization, or ICAO, which is a United Nations body that has the responsibility for coming up with all the rules pertaining to aviation globally on the planet. This UN body, ICAO, then goes from country to country performing audits to ensure that the country under audit has set up the necessary regulatory structure to allow for the necessary inspections to see if the operators in its aviation sector are operating safely and by the rules.
The chair recognizes the honourable member for Angliston on a point of order.
The member made an observation which I believe is not correct, and I think it's misleading to the Parliament. He indicated that an audit was done in late October 2017. I think it was November 2017 to be precise. But he indicated that the finding was that our jurisdiction was getting worse, not better. And I do not believe that was the finding. I think his own Director General indicated that there was a transitioning process where, in fact, radical reforms were in train. So you couldn't be getting worse if you were involved in a process of brand new modernization. So I understand the member wants to make some political points. I'm going to speak too, and I probably can make some too. But I don't think the member should mislead this Parliament that we were getting worse as a jurisdiction. He is not speaking the factual position of the Bahamas.
Thank you.
I'll tackle that point a little bit longer in my no problem. Yeah, you see, Mr. Speaker. No problem. I have not. This. You see, Mr. Speaker, it's not enough just to pass laws. It's just not to pass laws, although the legislative and regulatory structure provides a critical foundation to aviation safety oversight. But equally important, Mr. Speaker, and what the ICAO auditors also look for with an unrelenting tenacity is, are you enforcing your aviation rules? Are you effectively implementing the laws and regulations outlined in your legislation and accompanying regulations? Are the employees of the Bahamas Civil Aviation Authority suitably trained, suitably resourced, and are they checking what they need to check? And do they have proof, paperwork, records that demonstrate that our civil aviation regulators are doing their job as set out in the aviation legislation and operating regulations? Mr. Speaker, the 2017 ICAO Safety Oversight Audit, first and foremost, revealed that the Bahamas' aviation legislation and the Bahamas civil aviation structure had become outdated, was now non-compliant, and unable to keep up with the ever-evolving standards and recommended practices, SOPs, outlined in the UN Convention on International Civil Aviation and its annexes. The audit also revealed that although the Bahamas had aviation laws and regulations specifically outlined in the Civil Aviation Act 2016 and its accompanying regulations, there was woefully inadequate proof that these laws and regulations were being followed or enforced. Or to use ICAO speak, there was not effective implementation. As a result of this audit, the Bahamas' effective implementation score fell from an average of 56.98 to an average of 31.98, from 56.98 to 31.98 in late 2017. Mr. Speaker, this would be an ideal opportunity for me to play partisan politics. I could blame my predecessor for this low score, and needless to say, she would stand up on a point of order and blame me, but
The chair recognizes the honourable member for Angliston on a point of order.
Mr. Speaker, I think the member does not realize he's condemning himself. He was there for half a year, and actually, and I have information for even going for over his 4-year period, where he is saying that his own leadership did not affect the effective implementation he speaks about. The member cannot point a finger at any administration because the member was there for half a year.
you let me finish, please.
No.
Say that.
Honourable member.
No.
Honourable member for
Yes.
Angliston.
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
I'm permitting you
Yes, the member is suggesting
But
that he could
honourable
point a
member-
finger.
the point of order.
My point of order, Mr. Speaker, is that the member suggested in his way of not saying it, I could do this, but I'm not going to do that. If I wanted to do it, I would do it. it's a backhand way of making a suggestion. And I'm saying the suggestion is misleading to the factual situation. And I mean, I could help the member become more current
That's
if he
all right,
wishes
Mr.
so.
Speaker. I think a point is made. Thank you very much, good member. This would be an ideal opportunity. Let me just finish the paragraph and then you'll. This would be an ideal opportunity for me to play partisan politics. I could blame my predecessor for this low score, and needless to say, she would stand up on a point of order, and she did, and blame me for this abysmally low score. Since it happened on my watch, even though the audit was just 5 months after I took office. Took me a little time to figure it out. But Mr. Speaker, today I'm going to take the high road. The Bahamian people are not really interested in whether it was my fault or her fault. They are just interested in what we as a country are going to fix it. A 31.98 score puts us at the bottom of the list of Caribbean countries, and we should, as a country, desire to vastly improve the score. Other than wanting to not be the jurisdiction with one of the lowest scores in the region, another critical reason why we need to improve this score is if we intend to launch an aircraft registry. Mr. Speaker, an aircraft registry is a natural add-on business that the Bahamas can find quite lucrative in much the same way that our ship registry has generated healthy returns over the years. An aircraft registry will not only generate fee income for the government, but it will generate jobs and fee income for lawyers who will set up and arrange the addition of aircraft to our new aircraft registry in the field of aircraft maintenance and storage to accommodate persons wishing to store their aircraft in the jurisdiction, and fees generated by airports, inspectors, fuel providers, etc., which will be a natural offshoot of an aircraft registry from the resulting increased private aircraft traffic into the jurisdiction. Mr. Speaker, an aircraft registry is an excellent value-added service to offer second homeowners and financial services clients. And given that we are an English-speaking common law state with a stable democracy, with an established functioning legal system, studies show that establishing an aircraft registry in the Bahamas will be quite lucrative. But Mr. Speaker, no one wants to register their aircraft in a jurisdiction with a safety oversight audit score of 31.98, one of the lowest in the region, and certainly far lower than the jurisdictions where competing aircraft registry services are currently being offered. In the marketing material of a jurisdiction currently involved in the aircraft registry business, it states, and I quote, "Choosing an offshore aircraft registry with a top quality international reputation and uncompromising compliance to all regulatory standards should be at the top of the list of considerations," end quote. Mr. Speaker, in short, if we want to go into the lucrative job-creating, fee-earning aircraft registry business, we simply have to increase that audit score. Mr. Speaker, as a result, the result of the low audit score and the accompanying report, the Bahamas Civil Aviation Authority engaged in the development and execution of plans to fix the safety deficiencies that were identified, hired global industry expert consultants, and conducted broad domestic industry and stakeholder consultation, which resulted in the drafting of the proposed bills being debated here today. In addition, Mr. Speaker, the ICAO auditors are coming back this November in 10 short months to check up and follow up on our corrective action plans to determine whether previously identified safety deficiencies have been satisfactorily resolved. Mr. Speaker, once we have debated and hopefully passed these bills, our work as legislators and policymakers for safety oversight in the aviation sector will be largely complete. Now, it will be up to the professionals in the Civil Aviation Authority, under the leadership of the new Director General, Mr. Michael Allen, to make it happen, to demonstrate to the ICAO auditors that we are effectively implementing the laws outlined in these bills and the more important operating regulations that will accompany this legislation. Mr. Speaker, here are some of the major structural changes these three bills are seeking to achieve. First, to remove Part Roman numeral 7 from the Civil Aviation Act 2016, which contained provisions for the investigation and prevention of air accidents. As you all know, Mr. Speaker, this Honorable House of Assembly passed the necessary legislation to create the Aircraft Accident Investigation Authority a year ago in January 2020. This new authority, which was placed in the Ministry of Transport in order to create the necessary required separation from the Ministry of Aviation, is governed by its own act and regulations, thus removing the function of investigation and prevention of air accidents from the Civil Aviation Authority and the need for Part 7 to remain in the Civil Aviation Act. The second major structural change that these three bills are seeking to achieve is to separate the provision of air navigation services by the air traffic controllers who are currently embedded in the Civil Aviation Authority as the Bahamas Air Navigation Services Department into their own authority. The ICAO auditors pointed out that you cannot have a service provider, i.e. the air traffic controllers, in the same entity as the regulator. That is a conflict. How can a regulator regulate a service provider if they are part of the same organization? Thus, one of the bills before you is the Bahamas Air Navigation Services Authority Bill, which detaches the provision of air navigation services from the purview of the Civil Aviation Authority other than simply oversight. The third major structural change that these three bills are seeking to achieve is to develop the foundation for the Bahamas' Search and Rescue Coordination Center, which will provide much needed improvement to the jurisdiction's search and rescue capabilities. This will be achieved in collaboration with the Royal Bahamas Defense Force and will ensure that the Bahamas adopts global industry standards and recommended practices with regards to search and rescue protocols and procedures. The fourth major structural change that these three bills are seeking to achieve is to modernize and ensure the timeliness of the regulation making and amendment process. Right now, Mr. Speaker, the process to amend these very technical aviation regulations is time-consuming and cumbersome. Every 6 months, ICAO reviews and most probably changes or updates its rules, also known as annexes. And ICAO has noted that the Civil Aviation Authority has not been able to keep abreast with these changes, given the cumbersomeness of our regulation changing process, meaning that we are falling behind. As such, ICAO has strongly recommended, and these bills incorporate, the ability of the Director General to make very technical operating regulations on such areas as industry surveillance and licensing and certification and authorization. The fifth major structural change, and last, that these three bills are seeking to achieve is to finally make way for an enhanced aircraft registry and the charging of air navigation service fees, such as overflight and terminal air navigation fees, thereby creating a self-sustaining aviation regulatory environment and lessening the need to rely solely on public funds for its funding. Mr. Speaker, with that brief overview, let me take a few minutes to look at each bill individually and highlight some of the significant changes. I will start with the Civil Aviation Authority Bahamas Bill 2021. Mr. Speaker, the establishment of the Bahamas Civil Aviation Authority, along with its administrative and regulatory provisions, are contained in the current Civil Aviation Act. The introduction of the Civil Aviation Authority Bahamas Bill 2021 separates the administrative and regulatory functions of the authority from the provisions regulating the civil aviation industry. In layman's terms, Mr. Speaker, if you want to know the specific provisions regulating civil aviation in the Bahamas, you will go to, if passed, the Civil Aviation Act 2021. If you want to know who will be the enforcer of those regulations and how they are expected to do so, you will go, if passed, to the Civil Aviation Authority Bahamas Bill 2021. ICAO believes that this approach is cleaner, clearer, and easier to follow and digest. The Civil Aviation Authority Bahamas Bill 2021 will quite naturally provide for the continuation of the Civil Aviation Authority in its current form and is intended to come into effect at the same time as this Civil Aviation Bill, which I will discuss further on in my presentation. While the Authority Bill retains many of the powers, functions, and regulatory oversight capabilities enshrined in the 2016 Act, it also encompasses the following new provisions. Number one, Section 8, which requires the authority to keep and maintain registers of every application, all civil aircraft registered in the Bahamas, every air operating certificate that it issues, all registered, licensed, and certified aerodromes, and exemptions it may grant to any person or aircraft under the Civil Aviation Act. ICAO wants registers. If you have registers, they're easier to audit. Section 17, which addresses the power of the Director General to issue operating regulations, which was discussed above. Once again, Mr. Speaker, one of the largest areas of non-compliance with ICAO was that the process to make and amend regulations in the Bahamas. ICAO considered it lengthy, subsequently resulting in the Bahamas always playing catch-up with its revision of domestic legislation to ensure compliance with the ever-updating annexes to the Chicago Convention. Consequently, the introduction of the operating regulations will allow the authority, through the Director General, to amend the regulations governing the industry in a timely manner. While it is clear that the minister's powers and functions have been reduced with regard to regulation making, this has been done with the purpose of allowing very technical aviation experts to administer very technical aviation operating regulations. Mr. Speaker, changes to the operating regulations will be carefully managed and that they will have as their genesis changes to the ICAO annexes. They will be vetted by an internal body of seasoned experts of the authority, put out to public consultation, approved by the Board of Directors, and then signed by the Director General. The minister still retains the responsibility for executing aviation state requirements. In addition, the minister retains the ability to be consulted for approval on matters carried out by the authority, and the minister retains certain regulation-making powers under Section 59 of the accompanying Civil Aviation Bill. Section 16, paragraph 3, outlines the Director General's power to appoint, with the approval of the minister, committees to assist the authority in carrying out its functions under the Act. Section 16.4 allows the Director General to prescribe fees and charges. These new provisions were incorporated for the furtherance of the effort to make the Civil Aviation Authority a self-sustainable entity. Section 27.1, which calls for the establishment of a search and rescue coordination center. This provision addresses and satisfies the deficiency noted by ICAO that the Bahamas, as a member state to the Chicago Convention, must have a search and rescue center or cooperate with other jurisdictions for the purposes of search and rescue. Sections 27 and 28, which further elaborates the minister's functions and powers with respect to search and rescue and gives the minister the ability to issue directives to the authority. Next up, Mr. Speaker, is the Bahamas Air Navigation Services Authority Bill 2021. Once again, Mr. Speaker, in layman's terms, air navigation services is a fancy way of saying air traffic control services. As mentioned, Mr. Speaker, the legal requirements relating to the provision of air navigation services is currently in the Civil Aviation Act 2016, Part Roman numeral 11, Section 55, which calls for the establishment within the Civil Aviation Authority of an independent Bahamas Air Navigation Services Division. ICAO sadly finds that relationship between the authority and its division is inappropriate. It wants them separated. The authority, in its capacity as the regulator, cannot have embedded within itself an entity which it is expected to regulate. To overcome this conflict, the Bahamas Air Navigation Services Division, via the introduction and passage of this BANZA bill, the Bahamas Air Navigation Services Authority bill, I could call it BANZA, will be decoupled from the Civil Aviation Authority and become its own authority. This new independent Air Navigation Service Authority will be empowered to provide and charge for air navigation service fees for aircraft that fly into and out of and over the territory of the Bahamas. The introduction of the Air Navigation Services Authority Bill will establish the responsibilities, powers, and functions of the new authority and will demonstrate to both domestic and international stakeholders the government's commitment to establishing a futuristic strategy for the provision and the charging of air navigation services within the Bahamas' sovereign airspace and the creation of a self-sustaining aviation environment. The Banza Bill also requires accountability and cooperation between the new authority and the Civil Aviation Authority and compliance with the Civil Aviation Authority's operating regulations. I will highlight some of the noteworthy sections of this bill. Section 2, with the insertion of the new terminology of Bahamas administered airspace, Bahamas aircraft, and Bahamas territory, provides the Bahamas with more economic control over its sovereign airspace and expands its aircraft registry capabilities. Section 5 allows the new authority to enter into arrangements or partnerships with respect to the air navigation service. Section 20 gives the new authority, with the approval of the minister, the power to develop, recommend, and impose fees and service charges for the provision of air navigation services in the Bahamas, such as overflight fees for aircraft that transit Bahamian-administered airspace, but neither land in nor depart from the Bahamas. Air navigation services fees for services rendered within airspace of the Bahamas, including air traffic management, communications, navigation, radar surveillance, separation services, flight information services, procedural control and training. Air navigation services training, and any other service related to air navigation services in the Bahamas. Once again, Mr. Speaker, the passage of this bill seeks to set up the infrastructure so that we can finally begin to monetize one of our greatest natural resources, the airspace above us. We don't have to dig, we don't have to drill, we don't have to mine, we don't have to extract, we don't have to dredge anything to start making money from our airspace. We just have to figure out how to build and how to collect a fee every time a plane flies into or out of or through our airspace. For the 48 years that have elapsed since independence, Mr. Speaker, the Bahamas has never been able to realize 1 red cent from the airspace above our country. Mr. Speaker, we are so close to changing that, but more on that at a later date when our dream becomes a reality and I have something concrete to report. And the final noteworthy sections in this Bahamas Air Navigation Services Authority Bill are sections 22 and 23, which gives this new authority the ability to impose penalties for late payments and apply statutory liens on aircraft operators who do not pay their fees and/or their service charges. Not only is the bill providing the ability for the new authority to charge, but it is also providing it with enforcement capability, the teeth to collect. And finally, Mr. Speaker, is the Civil Aviation Bill 2021. The proposed Civil Aviation Bill 2021, as did its predecessor, contains the provisions for the regulation and oversight of the civil aviation industry in the Bahamas. But as already mentioned, stripped out of this bill are the relevant paragraphs on air accidents, which are now embedded in the Air Accident Investigation Authority Act 2020. Stripped out are the relevant paragraphs on the regulatory and administrative functions of the Civil Aviation Authority, which are now embedded in the Civil Aviation Authority Bahamas Bill 2021. And stripped out are the relevant paragraphs on the provision of air navigation services, which are now embedded in the Bahamas Air Navigation Services Authority Bill 2021. In addition, this bill has been slimmed down, relegating to the regulations all matters that are more efficiently dealt with using that more dynamic process. What is left, Mr. Speaker, is the Civil Aviation Bill 2021, which will now provide a one-stop shop of rules and regulations for persons or entities seeking to engage in civil aviation. In addition, Mr. Speaker, this bill seeks to repeal the existing schedules in the Civil Aviation General Regulations 27 and replace them with a suite of modernized and comprehensive operating regulations, which are now in full compliance with the ICAO standards and recommended practices. Moving forward, Mr. Speaker, these regulations, as mentioned, will be amended in a timely manner. Since one or a number of the 19 ICAO annexes are amended almost every 6 months, the introduction of the operating regulations will allow for the Bahamas to easily keep abreast with these changes and will put the Bahamas on par with other ICAO member states. While many of the provisions concerned with the regulation of the aviation sector remain the same or have been placed in operating regulations or brought forward from the regulations into this act, the following provisions of the Civil Aviation Bill are either new or noteworthy. Section 14 and 15 states that no air operator shall engage in commercial air transport unless that air operator holds an air transport license. The responsibility for the issuance of an air transport license now shifts from the minister to the Civil Aviation Authority. Sections 20 through 34 speak to which designation of persons or entities require aviation documents to engage in civil aviation activities within the Bahamas, outlines the process for the application of said required documents, summarizes the penalties for non-compliance with the terms or regulations governing such documents, and details where and how an aviation document holder can find redress for any decisions taken against them concerning such documents. Sections 34 and 44 specifically outline the new appeals process against an administrative penalty or an enforcement action levied against an individual or an entity by the authority. In the first instance, an appeal will go to the Director General, and if the party still feels aggrieved, they may appeal directly to the Supreme Court, which differs from the previous act, Section 73, which stated the appeal must next go to the Board of Directors of the Civil Aviation Authority. Given the fact that the Director General sits on the board of the Civil Aviation Authority, and given his potential influence over the board, it was felt that allowing an aggrieved party to proceed directly to the Supreme Court would ultimately be quicker and fairer. And lastly, Mr. Speaker, Section 53, paragraph 2 speaks to the general penalty that can be imposed if a person commits an offense under this act or breaches the provisions of this bill and its accompanying regulations. In Section 69, paragraph 2 of the previous act, the fine was limited to an amount not exceeding $10,000. It was felt that the ceiling was too low to encourage compliance, and so in this bill, a potential fine for a breach was increased to an amount not exceeding $100,000. Mr. Speaker, that concludes my presentation on these important and essential compendium of aviation bills. As such, Freetown moves and supports the Civil Aviation Bill 2021, the Civil Aviation Authority Bill 2021, and the Bahamas Air Navigation Services Authority Bill 2021.
Thank you very
Before I take my seat, Mr. Speaker, I would just like to provide a brief update to all Bahamians, but particularly the residents of Exuma, Long Island, Great Harbour Key, Abaco, and North Eleuthera on the current progress our government is making on the Family Island Airport Improvement Program in their community. Mr. Speaker, this update is particularly timely as it further demonstrates the strategy in action with my ministry, following the Prime Minister's policy direction at the 2021 Bahamas Business Outlook, where it was plainly advised that these airport projects have not been cancelled. Instead, and contrary to the incorrect media statements and any mischief making by anyone, the government has shifted the funding to public-private partnerships for several of our airport projects. Mr. Speaker, our Family Island airports need hundreds of millions of dollars in investment, money which in a good year was hard to find in an already overstretched capital works project. As such, Mr. Speaker, the Department of Aviation will utilize funding already in place from the IDB and secure the necessary additional funding via a public-private partnership to ensure these projects are able to be realized. Mr. Speaker, this additional funding has been secured for the PPP projects from a local financial institution, and so I'm now able to provide the following airport project update. Exuma International Airport. Mr. Speaker, the airport has been designed, and we are in the final stages of approving a contract for a Bahamian firm to build a new terminal at the existing airport site. I'm advised that we should be breaking ground on this terminal within the next 90 days and have engaged a best-in-class airport consulting firm that specializes in aviation PPPs to identify the best partner for the management and operation of this Exuma International Airport project while under construction and once it has been completed. Once the contract for the new terminal has been awarded, attention will be turned to the airside works, new runways and taxiways necessary to accommodate larger aircraft and increase traffic. Long Island. Mr. Speaker, the government has engaged a local architect to design the new Long Island International Airport at Deadman's Key. The designs are finalized, and we expect to break ground on this new airport by the end of the second quarter of 2021. The project specifications include a new 25,000 square foot terminal and fire station and a new 6,500 foot runway, since this airport is being designed to accommodate regional jets from North America, so that for the first time, Long Islanders can have regularly scheduled flights directly from North America and or the Caribbean. Great Harbour Key. The new airport in Great Harbour Key in the Berry Islands is currently under construction, and I'm advised approximately 70% complete. The project involves a 9,500 square foot terminal building and 4,600 feet of new runway. The project is expected to be completed within the next 6 months and ready for occupancy shortly thereafter. Abaco, Marsh Harbor. We have committed $3 million in the repairs to the Leonard Thompson International Airport, inclusive of $1.5 million in post-Dorian construction repairs, $500,000 in air conditioning repairs, $300,000 in mold remediation work, and $420,000 in replacement lighting, all as a result of Hurricane Dorian. Treasure Key Airport. Mr. Speaker, the Department of Aviation and the Project Implementation Unit attached to the Ministry of Public Works are developing a project to rebuild the Treasure Key Airport through the $1.7 million facility available from the IDB. This project will start as soon as the project details have been approved by the IDB. Northern Lutra. Mr. Speaker, we have not forgotten Northern Lutra. Funding has been secured through the IDB and the PPP for this huge project. The government intends to duplicate the Exuma design in Northern Lutra and construct an entirely new runway to accommodate larger aircraft and increase traffic. Freeport. The government, through the Airport Authority, is very close to acquiring this airport from Hutchinson, and then will engage consultants on how to redevelop that airport. Mr. Speaker, as we all know, that Freeport Airport has been destroyed. That Freeport Airport has been destroyed by storm surge from a hurricane on numerous occasions, and so any design of a new airport in Freeport must involve a plan to mitigate against such weather events. Mr. Speaker, the expanded footprint of our various Family Island airports has necessitated the acquisition of additional land from the Crown, the Treasurer, and private owners. In addition, Mr. Speaker, if it is the intention of the government to use a PPP to develop these airports, then for the very first time, these airports must be legally defined on the ground. As such, surveyors have been employed and have completed the process of defining what specific land should be encompassed in a particular airport, taking into consideration future expansion. Specifically, the land acquisition process will include the following: Exuma, 100 additional acres, expanding the total footprint to 1,010.09 acres. North Eleuthera, 556 additional acres, expanding the total footprint to 658 acres. Deadman's Key, 665.19 additional acres, expanding the total footprint to 753.56 acres. And Leonard Thompson International Airport in Marsh Harbor, 2,485.87 acres, expanding the total footprint to 2,671.54 acres. Mr. Speaker, as you can see, we are very busy doing the people's business in the aviation sector and creating many, many opportunities for Bahamians. Lots of exciting developments, which, when time permits, I will elaborate more in greater detail. Once again, Mr. Speaker, Freetown moves and supports these three bills.
Thank you very much, honorable member. Is there a seconder? Is there a seconder? The chair recognizes the honorable member for Baines and Grantstown.
Mr. Speaker, seeing that we're approaching the 1 o'clock hour.
The chair recognizes the honorable member for Bamboo Town.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, seeing that we're approaching the 1 o'clock hour, Mr. Speaker, I'm going to move that we do take our lunch and break, and that the House suspends until 3 p.m., and we will return at 3 p.m. where the honorable member for Bain and Grandstand will second the motion.
Thank you, honorable member. Is there a second to the motion? Thank you, honorable member. Honorable members, it has been moved and seconded that the business of this house be suspended at this time until 3 p.m. this afternoon. As many members that are in favor will remain seated, those who oppose will stand. The business of this house stands suspended until 3 p.m. this afternoon.